Okay. Good evening and welcome to the March 4, 2021 Parks and Recreation Commission regular video meeting. I'm Rory Westberg, Parks and Recreation Commission Chair. In accordance with the proclamation 20-28.10 and the Governor's extended Safe Start order, tonight's Parks and Recreation Commission meeting is using Zoom conferencing technology provided by Zoom. The Zoom video of this meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast live via Zoom and will be uploaded to the city's YouTube channel later this evening. City staff Ryan Daly, Jason Kintner, Paul West, Merrill Thomas Schatt, Katie Herzog, Council Member Liaison Jake Jacobson, and Consultant Emily Moon are participating in tonight's meeting remotely. Other public audience members are listening to the meeting by telephone or via the internet. Welcome to all and thank you for joining us tonight. Commissioners, would you please turn on your microphones? And will city staff please call the roll?
Good evening, Chair Westberg.
Here.
Vice Chair McCarthy.
Here.
Commissioner Richter.
Here.
Commissioner Cohen.
Here.
Commissioner Gualtieri.
Here.
Commissioner Birkenwald.
Here.
Commissioner Struck.
Here.
Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioners, before we start the business of tonight's meeting, I want to suggest a few rules to help the meeting run smoothly. If a commissioner has a question, please use the raised hand feature. I will do my best to recognize commissioners in the order in which hands are raised. Everyone will be asked to limit him or herself to one question and one clarifying question if necessary, so that each commissioner has a chance to ask a question before a commissioner is given another chance to ask a question. Additionally, prior to speaking, please state your name for those listening in on the meeting. Tonight's agenda will not include in-person public appearances in accordance with Proclamation 20-28.11 and the Governor's extended Safe Start order. Meryl, do we have any individuals signed up to speak?
No one signed up to speak tonight.
Okay. Then we will move directly to the first item on the agenda, which is to review and consider approving the minutes from the February 4, 2021 meeting. I assume you've all had the chance to look those over, so may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 4, 2021 meeting?
You meant February 4, right?
I'm sorry, February.
I'll make that motion. Don Cohen making that motion.
Peter
Thanks,
Struck
Don.
seconding.
Thank you. Commissioners, please turn on your microphones, and will city staff please conduct a roll call vote?
Chair Westberg.
Aye.
Vice Chair McCarthy.
Aye.
Commissioner Richter.
Aye.
Commissioner Cohen.
Aye.
Commissioner Gualtieri.
Aye.
Commissioner Birkenwald.
Aye.
Commissioner Struck.
Aye.
The motion passes and the minutes are approved. The second item of business is regarding the Luther Burbank dock repair and reconfiguration project. We welcome Paul West to introduce that and give us an update on that topic.
Thank you, Paul West, CIP Project Manager. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Struck, who has some introductory remarks on the overview of the process we've been through so far, and then I will go into the details of the draft concept plan.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, I'm pleased to present tonight the subcommittee's draft of the preferred concept plan. As you will recall, the full commission developed a set of criteria and then provided a level of priority for each of those criteria when we discussed it in full. The subcommittee, which comprised of myself, Commissioner Westberg, as well as Commissioner Gualtieri, we took that information along with the initial 3 draft concepts that were provided, as well as public input that we had received, And over the course of 3 meetings, we discussed with city staff, primarily Paul West and Ryan Daly, as well as 2 consultants, Andy Bennett and Peter Hummel, to arrive where we are tonight, which is a preferred draft concept for your consideration. As was highlighted in the memo that hopefully you had a chance to read, I believe there was 4 what I'll call overarching themes that we somewhat settled on in terms of looking at all these criteria. And these aren't exclusive, but I think they're probably the most prominent. First was we were very attentive to environmental quality and sustainability. And so things like tree canopy, impact of lighting, impervious surface, things like that. Secondly, we were very concerned and wanted to make sure that we considered intensity of use. And as you all know, this area is not really that large. And so we wanted to be very mindful that we were not trying to, put too many activities, too many things in this very small space, and make sure that it was that the space was designed appropriately given the amount of space available. Also, we were wanted to be consistent with prior views of the community as would be reflected in documents like the Luther Burbank Master Plan and other documents. And we wanted to make sure that we were consistent with those. And if we were going to deviate, we better have a darn good reason why. And then finally, we were mindful that this area, as many have commented, is really a unique area in the Mercer Island Parks and Open Space system. And we wanted to make sure that we preserve that uniqueness and try to enhance it and make sure that it was a special area. So I think with that brief overview, I'll turn it back to Paul to kind of walk through in more detail the actual draft concept. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Struck. Paul West here again. I'm going to share my screen now with my PowerPoint. So we have now what we're calling the draft preferred concept plan. The draft will drop off of it, I guess, when it is adopted by the commission. But for now, that's the working title. You've all had a chance to look at the exhibit in the agenda packet, which is basically a set of ideas that now I think are more thought through in terms of working together. And I'll go through some of the ways that that happens. Let's turn to the docs first. The concept for the docks is 2 docks that maximize the existing overwater coverage that we have. One is a breakwater that's segmented on the outside of the system. That dock is 10 feet wide and the longest length is 200 feet long. That would be a floating dock that is moored down with under tension. In other words, that becomes a breakwater when there's actual force exerted to pull that structure down into the water, which then resists the wave action. What that also does is it stabilizes the breakwater and makes it more of a usable platform for activity. So you wouldn't see it having as much motion as a typical floating dock because it has that downward force being applied to it. And part of this dock system is a modest amount of finger docks. These are important because they provide better stability for boats that want to moor there. The prevailing waves are from the east or from the bottom of your screen upward, and boats that face into the waves obviously do better than boats that are broadside to the waves. So we provide a limited number of finger piers, and these benefit ADA access and also people who want to moor for a longer term of the day. So for somebody transferring from a wheelchair into a boat, the stability factor is critical, whether it's a non-motorized boat or a motorized boat. And for somebody who wants to leave their boat in the water and go off and explore the rest of the park, they will probably be more comfortable doing that if they know that their boat is facing into the prevailing waves. So this is an attempt to give some people the chance to stay longer and enjoy the park as well. Another feature of this dock system is a 10 by 50 float that currently exists in the docks. The city installed that to support our boating programs, and we are seeking to reuse it for two reasons. One, there's a cost savings involved, and possibly a little bit easier permitting to reuse something that's existing. And the second, which is to help us with avoid restrictions that grant programs might impose on our dock use. Because the city has funded this piece of the dock, we can use it in whatever way that we want for our boating programs. When we have grant funding into the rest of the non-motorized dock, there may be restrictions on how that can be used for city programs, and we will have to negotiate that with the granting agency. We're not so restricted by use of this float. So there's advantages there. The grading on this site will be in the gangways and on the non-motorized dock. As I said before, it's most likely that the breakwater will be a concrete decked float. I want to now, let's see, I want to turn to a couple of questions that Commissioner Cohen asked about the docks, because he was concerned about the ability to use the docks for fishing and kind of passive contemplative uses. And so I want to point out, first of all, that this in the final configuration of this dock system, we will have 3 docks: the existing North Pier, which will be renovated, the new breakwater dock system, and the new non-motorized system. The North Pier will remain, and will probably remain as the existing fishing pier by default. It's currently the most popular pier to fish from. I don't see that changing. As I said, the breakwater is concrete decked, so that provides a stable platform. So that is also available for fishing. Probably less useful for fishing will be the non-motorized docks, because they're a graded decking and probably not as stable as the breakwater. All these same docks are available for the passive use contemplative type of activities. I want to talk a little bit now about timing of use, because that I think is critical to the activities of fishing and other non-boating use. Boating happens mainly in the summer, and at this site mainly on the summer weekends, and mainly in the afternoons on summer weekends, from say noon to 5. And at other times there may be a boat or two that comes in here, but at the other times these docks are mostly used by non-boaters, and the non-boaters use these docks year round. I want to show you a 1-minute clip of a time-lapse video from this past summer that I think illustrates this well. And I am not, let's see.
This isn't me not catching anything, is it, Don Cohen?
No, hold on, let's see. I'm having a, so I assume that you're not seeing a view of the docks right now. Is that true? There we go. Okay, I got that. Let's see if I can share the screen. Okay. Stop this. Let me try this again. Ah, here it is. Okay, great. All right, so you can just watch and there's a lot happening quickly, but I'll try to narrate. So it's now about 6 in the morning and we see we've already got fishermen there, fisher folks using the docks. If you look at the far pier, occasionally somebody shows up at the far end of that, but they don't usually stay very long. Now we're at about 10 in the morning and there's probably peaking at the fishing activity. And we're now coming up on noon. The fisher folk have maybe gone somewhere else. Oh, it's stalled out here. Get this to. Okay, and now there's a boat. It's about 2 in the afternoon, and there's a boat tied up. And if you look, the fisher folk come back a little bit, but they are a little more intermittent. And I think what this illustrates is that the North Pier is well used for fishing. The other pier is less so, and the boat use. This was on a Saturday after 4th of July, and on a good weather day, I would expect there to be a lot of boats, and there were maybe 3 or 4 boats that came into the docks at that period of time. Now, what we don't know is how the new docks will change the demand. We expect there'll be more boats coming in because they'll be more usable for boats to come in. And we don't know how the advent of light rail will affect the use by boats. There may be some impact there. But what I don't expect is that the peak demand dynamic to change. In other words, summer weekends that are warm and sunny will be the big boating weekends, and specifically in the afternoons will be the peak times that boats really only get on the water later in the morning and go looking for stuff to do when it's the warmest and sunniest. So I'll also just point out that there is a fishing pier just south of the main piers, and that fishing pier is intended to remain. So that will provide a more exclusive fishing facility. And that tends to be quieter for those who want to find a quieter place to access the water. So that is the kind of my response to those questions. And I'd just like to see now if there's any questions about the docks before I go on to other elements.
Commissioner McCarthy.
Hi there, Jody McCarthy. I just was wondering if there was going to be a covered area in the docks part at all. I didn't see that in there, but I saw it mentioned as one of the things you guys thought about.
I don't remember us actually talking about it during this design process. I wonder if any of the other commissioners could comment if they remember anything like that.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Struck. You're correct, Paul, in your recollection to my, I don't recall. I know, Jody, I think in one of the earlier sessions you had mentioned something about, a covered area. I thought it was more on land than on the dock, but I don't recall us speaking to that concept or idea specifically.
Okay, I just, when I was reading through things quickly today, I thought I saw that, but it could have been definitely like the classroom or something like that was being talked about. And thank you to the subcommittee for doing all of the work on this, by the way.
All right, I'm going to go back to the, excuse me, is there anybody else has a question?
This is Commissioner Westberg. I just had it's a question for clarification purposes. So you mentioned that the breakwater dock would have a concrete deck, but it's still a floating dock. It's not.
Correct.
It'll be able to move up and down on pilings or whatever, and depending on lake level.
Now, this is concept. The Andy Bennett, the engineer, told me that it's a concrete deck at this level of design. We don't know what's going to happen during permitting, so that could change, but that's what his expectation is right now, given what he knows of permitting and the conversations we've had so far with DNR.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about permitting and whether or not that would present a problem, but we'll see, I guess, down the road.
Yeah. What I do know is that they're most concerned about having grading near the shore. So the fact that this breakwater is further offshore probably makes it less of an issue.
Okay, Commissioner Cohen.
Don Cohen, thank you. And I agree with Jody that really appreciate the work that the subcommittee did. And I appreciate Paul's comments in response to some of mine. I know that my family's particular interests don't have a veto or anything, but as we develop these plans further, things like, is it going to be a concrete breakwater so that people can walk on it? Is it going to be usable for people who either don't have boats, don't care about boats? My grandsons, for example, they don't sit there and drop line fish for little fish. Maybe that's why they don't catch that much. They go out to the far pier and cast as far as they can. Because for all the obvious reasons, in addition to the fact that that's where CJ told us the bigger fish are, out deeper. So again, all that I'm saying is, as this develops further, I just request that we keep in mind, not just for kids' activities, but to be able to walk out and just glance at the water, glance at the cormorants flying or the blue herons and so forth. And I appreciate Paul's video and some other things, but we have to, in my view, continue to be mindful and ever mindful as the design evolves. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to keep going here.
Commissioner Struck has a
Oh.
question.
Well, I just wanted to kind of respond to Commissioner Cohen's suggestions, which I agree with. Don, because since you use this a lot, I mean, would you be in favor of some kind of, for the contemplative approach, some kind of bench like at the end of the fishing dock or something like that? I just raise it. I don't know.
Don Cohen, that isn't something that I thought about. You know, it's not something I thought about because right now the docks are high enough that if you want to, you can just sit down. I did, when I emailed Paul and you, I did ask whether with the graded dock areas, whether when it was windy, it was going to be splashing water up so that it really would not be appropriate for people to use for other than, you know, the specific use of non-motorized and motorized craft. But I think he's at least responded to that about what would be available and what was contemplated, at least at this point. So I don't care about a bench personally, Peter. I don't mind it, but I don't care about it.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead, Paul.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving along. So moving to the north end of the site, we now in the concept plan have an accessible path to the plaza coming down the hill. Right now it's not accessible because there's a steep grade as you walk onto the, oops, excuse me, what happened there? As you walk onto the driveway. So this would have to be reconfigured to allow that to ease that grade. There would be an accessible path to the cobble beach. The commission or the subcommittee asked that that be constructed of natural materials as much as possible to blend with the existing beach area. And there would be a wider cobble beach at the end of that access path. Now this wider cobble beach would be cutting into the bank, and there's a concern among the subcommittee that it not impact trees, or that we understand what the impact of the trees are before we totally accept this as a component. So we will be revisiting this with the commission at 30% design. But here is a picture of where that wider beach would be. As you can see, this is May 9th or May 8th, and the beach is only about 5 feet wide here. Very difficult to land a boat there, especially when the waves come in. A wider beach of, maybe another 5 or so feet would greatly help create space at this peak water time, which is mid-May to mid-July. Here's the poplar tree. This is the larger poplar tree that might be affected. There's a smaller one to the right of it. But you can see there's quite a bit of distance between the edge of the beach and that tree. I'm pretty confident we can create some more space in here without impacting trees. There's some smaller trees. There's a pine, and I think this is an oak tree that was planted. Those could be replanted fairly easily. This poplar tree has to be evaluated for its health and longevity as well to see if its retention is warranted. So we'll come back at 30% with information about that to get a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Also, just to the south of this beach area is the bulkhead area, which has the Hanson bollards. And this has got 2 significant features in the concept plan. One is to retain the Hanson bollards, and the other is to add steps to the water. These are 2 elements that go together, because the landscape architect informed us that we would possibly have to put a railing in here to meet code if we start to mess with the plaza. And having steps here and having some access through the bollards would possibly avoid the need for a railing. And so, but there's the other issue of how does that interact with these bollards? Does it affect the art quality of the bollards and the usability of the steps? And what are the permitting and cost aspects to those steps? They cause more overwater coverage in the nearshore environment. That's a fairly significant impact. We will have to evaluate that with more design and come back to the commission with that information. In addition, the subcommittee wanted us to bring this to the Arts Council and have the Arts Council understand what the issues and trade-offs are here so that they can weigh in on it as well. Any questions on that part of the concept plan?
Commissioner Cohen.
Yeah, thank you, Don Cohen. This is just a question I should know the answer to. When you talk about making the cobbled area to the north wider to make it easier for non-motorized craft to land there. So somebody like Commissioner Gualtieri is going to come in a kayak and then carry it from there up the newly configured path to her car in the parking lot. I mean, is that the idea?
Paul West here. The answer is probably not. I don't think we're contemplating this being a launch and retrieval site for car-topped boats. It's more a way station for boats that are already in the water and seeking facilities, i.e. a restroom, and or wanting to visit the park. And it's also a launch site for our boating programs, our kayak camps and classes, and possibly the rental program that we contemplate. So it's a very steep climb or a very long climb, one way or the other, to get up to the parking lot. We don't anticipate a lot of people wanting to carry their boats that far. And we do have a plan for a better hand carry site, which would be next to the swim beach to the south of here.
Thank you.
Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you, Jody McCarthy. I'm glad you asked that question, Dawn, because I was wondering that as well. And I just wanted to say that I love that you guys are thinking about the Arts Commission and trying to incorporate them into this project as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Westberg. I just have a quick question, Paul, that I don't recall that we discussed what the material would be for the ADA accessible trail. So you've got a gravel trail coming into asphalt. And I assume that you'd change the grade and leave those two materials in place. Is that kind of what we're thinking?
That's what I was thinking, and what I was hearing from the subcommittee was gravel surface trail with there's going to need to be some kind of retaining wall, so it might be made out of rockery, and with railings that are probably wood or have a wood component so that they hide any metal components that we have to install. I mean, a typical ADA ramp here would be poured concrete with steel rails, and I think that's what the subcommittee was trying to avoid. So to the extent we can do that, and I think we can make it more natural looking, the better it will blend.
No, thanks for that. The piece, and I remember our discussion of that. The piece I was referring to is where it comes off the existing ADA trail down to the waterfront, the gravel.
Oh yeah, that would also be gravel.
And how that connects to the current asphalt path.
Yeah, that also, because it's currently fine gravel, I don't see why we would change that. We don't have any design yet on how it's going to interface with that asphalt path, and I think that's going to be a trick. That's why we have a landscape architect on board. So I can't really tell you much more than that.
Oh, that's good. Thanks. Yeah, I don't see any other questions.
Okay, so moving on to the main plaza, we're going to look at the rest of the components here. I'll run through them and then we can have a question and answer again. One of the overarching concerns the subcommittee had was to prevent clutter. And so the amount of seating in this project has been kept to, I wouldn't call it a minimum, but it's been kept modest. And one of the places for seating would be where we used to have benches up against the east side of the boiler building. And this is a spot for seating mostly because it provides a territorial view of the water, and it provides that eastern sun exposure for people who want to sit here in the mornings or who want to sit here on a hot day in the shade. Moving along to the main plaza, there currently is a large metal kiosk in the plaza, and that would be removed, and the new kiosk would replace it in a less obtrusive area. And on the topic of signage, the subcommittee really didn't want a lot of new signage, or they wanted the signage to be positioned and integrated into the existing surroundings. So the committee was fine with having one or two interpretive signs on the site, but that they be integrated with at the edges of the site or on the building, so that it doesn't take up a lot of real estate. Another component of the concept plan is redoing the plaza paving. We have 45-year-old paving. It's settled quite a bit in some places. The roots of the trees are heaving it in others. Some places have been patched with concrete. It's brittle and starting to break up in places. It really is a renovation need that we have. And so the idea is to, at 30% design, come up with a plan for repaving the plaza and incorporate that into the concept plan. Moving to the west side of the plaza, we have the concession stand underneath, which is existing, that would just be used for the boating programs. And then on top of the restrooms, we would have a new outdoor classroom with a railing around it. And the subcommittee was pretty excited about this idea because what it does is it takes the boating programs and takes the main traffic of those programs off of the main plaza. So it keeps the plaza open for other park users and also provides a possible space for canopies and tables or chairs or something like that where classes and gatherings could be held. This not only helps with the programming, but it also provides a overlook area for the general public to use when there are no programs up there. Moving to the south of that, there would be a ramp at the back side of the restroom building that helps people access that outdoor classroom going up from the service road. And that ramp would go behind the existing tree there that is cutting in front of it. The proposed location of a new kiosk would be next to the entrance of the restroom. And that location is contemplated because it's at the edge of the plaza pavement and it's directly in line with people who are coming off the docks. If you come off the docks, you're facing that kiosk, and so you would know immediately where to go to get information about the park or regulations or whatever that you want to find out about. Finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about the southeast corner of the site where we're talking about where we have existing trees. These trees are stagnating. They're not really unhealthy. One is fairly unhealthy. Two are just, I would call, stagnant in their growth. They've been in there for 40 plus years and they haven't really grown to their potential. They're also causing a lot of conflicts with the pavement in terms of root heave and water drainage, and they can't really grow much bigger. They're root bound in the current situation. Removing these trees and replacing them in pavement with proper root volume would give new trees the space to actually grow to their potential. And the idea here is that we would not necessarily plant them in the same location because these are quite close together for the size trees they could have been. So as part of the pavement design, we would design 3 new tree locations within the plaza, within this part of the plaza, and also locate 1 picnic table among these trees. And that would provide a little, another seating opportunity for the park users. All right, so that's the tour of the plaza in this draft concept plan. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Cohen,
You're on mute.
and then Commissioner Richter.
Sorry, Don Cohen, is the path that would get somebody, the new path that would get somebody to the top to the new classroom area, is that ADA compliant? Does that have to be?
Yes,
Okay.
it has to be, and it will be.
Thank you.
There's a bit of design to do there, so it's we have some idea that it's feasible, but we'll have to design it to know for sure.
Commissioner Richter.
Hi, Amy Richter. I actually have 2 questions. My first one is that outdoor classroom. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Just in terms of what it would look like? Like I heard you say chairs and tables. Is that what that is? Or is there something more to it?
The boating programs, the camps that we've been having usually have some kind of classroom component, which involves the instructor doing demonstrations or showing something on a whiteboard. I'm really not sure what the needs are there. Ryan might be able to speak to that a little bit better, but I know that they've been using whiteboards and tables and chairs in the past for those classroom components. They would all be movable, as far as I understand. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, it's more, my question is more like, so it's not a structure that's going on top.
No, it's just a deck with a railing around it.
My other question is about the trees. I heard you
Yes.
say you're going to replace the trees. Are you replacing it with 3 because there was 3 there before? And does it have to be 3? Could it be more? Could it be less? Like,
3 seems, in landscape architecture, you try to not do even numbers because they look odd. 3 is usually a balanced appearance for something that, you either do 1, 3, 5, 7, or some, odd number. But no, there's no hard and fast rule about that.
but you wanted to replace the trees that were there. Like, did you consider not having the trees, or because we're taking them out, we put them back?
Well, one of the guiding principles was to try to retain trees. So that's, I think, what we're doing. But that could be discussed again, revisited by the subcommittee if you ask that.
Any other questions? Mr. Struck.
Yeah, just to kind of respond a little bit, I think we're, the subcommittee, we discussed this, but I think at this point we're somewhat flexible, what makes the most sense. The other comment I would make is looking at the rooftop classroom. If you go, I don't know if you can have a kind of visual in your mind, but that area just kind of, when it's not being used as a classroom, it's just such an ideal viewing spot. You're way up, you're up above the water, so you get more of a panoramic view of the whole area out towards the water. You're kind of off the beaten path, so you can kind of be more contemplative, to use the term that was used earlier in the evening. And so I think that's kind of one of the signature pieces of this redesign is making sure that works. Thank you.
Commissioner Birkenwald.
I just wanted, this is more of a comment, and I'm not sure we're going to talk about this more, but I love the stairs down to the water. Are we going to look at that more closely, or is that just a given that you had mentioned earlier?
It's in the concept plan right now. So unless the commission as a whole wants to strike that from the concept plan, it will be explored more in detail as for design in the 30% design phase. So right now it's in, and we just have to figure out what's involved with doing that. So yeah, I think.
Okay.
Well,
I just,
go ahead.
I just wanted to say I love that, and I think that would really change the way the space is used. So I just thought that was cool.
This is Commissioner Westberg. Paul, I know that a new trail is going to be constructed from the swim beach over to the plaza area. Will that trail come into the plaza at the same location as the current trail?
Yes, it will, but it will not follow so closely to the edge of the water. It will leave the plaza at the current location, but climb gradually up the bank to be a little bit further away from the water. Because right now the shoreline right next to the trail is eroding pretty severely.
And will it be ADA?
Yes, it will.
Thank you.
That trail will probably tie into the ramp coming off the outdoor classroom as the accessible route. In other words, we'll be able to go, a wheelchair will be able to go down that trail and then come to an intersection where the trail heads up to the classroom.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Paul, continue.
Okay, I just want to wrap up with just talk a little bit about the criteria, the evaluation criteria that the commission worked on over the winter. I did an initial analysis of the preferred concept to compare it against the 3 alternatives that were initially presented. And I think that this is a way of demonstrating that the preferred concept really hits a lot of the criteria well. I'm also open to the commissioner's input on my ratings. I'm not saying that I'm, these ratings are set in stone. They're based on considerations that I've tried to list over in the right-hand column, so that people can understand what I was considering when I was making these ratings. But I think it's a fairly simple way of showing what the strengths of this design is, and that we were faithful to what the commission charged us with doing. So, and I would be happy to, I don't think we need to go into this very much right now, but if commissioners have comments on this analysis, I'd be happy to take them anytime between now and the next regular meeting in April, and consider your input on it. And if there's any questions on it now, I'd be happy to answer them.
Commissioner Cohen.
Don Cohen, just sort of consistent with my previous comments. I'm not sure that under compatible with fishing, sunbathing, and other existing passive uses, I'm not sure it ought to be a 4. It probably ought to be a 3.5 or something. But I'm not hard and fast on it. And you did respond to my comments on it. And I favor this preferred concept overall. So it doesn't really matter to me whether it's a 4 or a 3, for example, on that one. Thank you.
Commissioner Richter.
Amy Richter, I apologize if you explained this before, but it's the scale's 1 to 5.
That's correct.
5 being the most, and then you rated each alternative plus the preferred by this
That's
1 to
correct.
5 scale. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, does that conclude your presentation, Paul?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners about the overall concept that we haven't covered so far? Commissioner McCarthy.
Thank you, Jody McCarthy. I really like the ideas that you guys came up with. I think that it has a really nice balance of the things that we have been looking at, and have the passive uses contemplative, as we have said, and also the boating, as well as making it more ADA accessible, and using the rooftop to make the deck for the classroom. It really is going to open it up a lot and make that plaza even better for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Commissioner Struck.
Yeah, just to quickly follow up, I think the 2 kind of signature design ideas, and they've already been mentioned, but I'll just kind of second them here. Is one is the classroom above the building and that viewing area, and then the second is the steps to the water, if that is feasible. I know it's labeled aspirational because there needs to be more work, but I think that could really be the signature piece of this whole redesign. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? I'm going to suggest we take a 5-minute break now and then wade into the next agenda item, which is the recreation reset plan, because that promises to be, I think, a fairly long and detailed discussion. So why don't we reconvene at 6:25, and we will move to the third item of business, which is the reset plan. Don't forget to stop your video. Commissioners, if you're back from break, please turn on your video. Okay, I think we have a quorum back, so we'll proceed to the third item of business, which is an update on the recreation reset plan. And for that, we have transition team manager Ryan Daly and consultant Emily Moon with us. So I don't know who's starting, but
I'll get us started. Thank you, Ryan Daly, Operations Transition Team Manager. I do want to note this is Central Washington colors, not any other college out there. So I saw some concern on some of our commissioners' faces. I just wanted to clear that up. But with that, I do want to just move straight to introducing Emily Moon, our consultant, who has been working with us since October. And she will lead us through this presentation, and there will be ample time, and I think this will be the focus tonight, for the Parks and Recreation Commission to really discuss where we are in the process and provide some really valuable input as we move into our future meetings. So with that, I will pass it to Emily.
Great, thank you, Ryan. I'm going to share the screen now. How are we looking? Good, okay, fantastic, thank you. All right, so tonight, because it's a regular business meeting, we have perhaps fewer topics. We'll see how that feels for all of you. So tonight we are going to cover just the big picture, make sure everybody's kind of on the same page of where we're going next. We have some graphics to help visualize that a little bit. We're going to talk about the reset phasing plan, and I'll define that as we go. And then we're going to talk about what it will take to implement phase one. So that's the resourcing plan. And then at the end, we'll talk about a list that the reset team has been putting together of program development, policies, and procedures to-dos, all the behind the scenes work that we need to get ready in order to successfully implement the reset phase or reset plan. So that is our agenda. For the big picture, we developed this little graphic. Ultimately, where we're going is in yellow, the comprehensive reset strategy, or the reset plan. I've been using different terms for that. That is ultimately what we're trying to achieve. We're crafting that. We have the commission, the reset team has worked on most of the items that are in the blue boxes. In previous meetings, we're going to also touch on a few of those this evening. But more directly, this meeting is going to be focused on talking about the items that are in green. So hopefully that gives you a sense of how all these pieces are connected that we have been talking about since very early on. I wanted to also be clear. I've heard some of you say, what do you need from us? So hopefully this clarifies it a little bit. Tonight, what we're looking for is some feedback on the phasing plan, some input on that resourcing plan for phase one, and just some review and comment on the policies list. That's a working document. It's in part a staff tool, but ultimately pieces of it will become part of the Parks and Recreation Commission's work plan. The next meeting will be on the 18th of March. And during that special meeting, we will provide you with a draft phase one fee schedule. And I was specific about that being phase one, because as we have been thinking about developing the fee schedule, it has become even more clear that we have a little bit more work to do to make sure that the fee schedule is in good alignment with the cost recovery framework. But also there are policies and procedures that we may need to tweak in order to be reflected in the fee schedule. So we're trying to figure out which piece can come first. And what we landed on is we can at least begin to show that draft phase 1 fee schedule for you on the 18th. It's less urgent for us to develop the fees for phase 2 and phase 3, since we won't be implementing those for a little bit of time. The second thing that we are going to do is probably the bulk of the meeting, and that is to review that draft comprehensive reset strategy. Now, my goal is to get it in your hands, if not part of the whole packet, perhaps separately on March 12th. That'll give you the weekend plus the first few days of the week prior to the meeting in order to read through it and process it a little bit. So I'm hoping that'll be enough time to get those thoughts percolating. And then if we do have time on the 18th, we'll start a conversation around differential pricing, the policy that will go with that. We talked a little bit about that last time. Again, that's as an example, the city has pricing structure for some programs and services where residents pay less than non-residents. That's one example of a differential pricing policy. So we'll share some of those classifications and some ideas that we may have. And then later we'll be coming back with some suggestions for revising or improving that policy and seek your approval of that. Ultimately, as I said, we will be looking for you to approve that reset strategy and recommend it to the city council along with the phase 1 resourcing plan. So this is our schedule. I just spoke about what we're doing on March 18th. I'm not going to read you everything on this slide, but perhaps one of the biggest items on here is on April 20th, and that's when the joint meeting will be held with the city council and this commission. That's when we will present the draft strategy to the city council, seek their input, and then following that, make any revisions with your assistance. And we hope that in mid-late May, city council will ultimately adopt the reset strategy and give approval to the phase 1 resources. So I'm turning right now to the phasing plan. We spoke last time about the decision factors that the reset team was starting to use when contemplating what programs and services should be offered, when and how. And we thought about several things. First, we thought about how do we continue to build out this plan so that the cost recovery philosophy is supported. And that the pricing strategy that we're developing is also working successfully. One of the things we heard from community members is there's great support for leveraging the community center in order to provide more or better public services. So for example, that is one of the things that we are trying to keep in mind as we develop this structure and think about what to offer when. We also wanted to keep in mind how we can represent community values, attend to the needs, and then be successful. Whatever we roll out, we want to do well. So on the left-hand side, we boiled that all down last time. This is really a refresher slide to focusing on delivering what is core and essential, defining that as we've done before as what's the public good social core and what is the business sustainability core. Public good social core is found in the lower levels of the cost recovery pyramid, and the business sustainability is found in tiers 5 and 4. So one of the other objectives we have, as I mentioned, is to do a few things well before starting more. Given that we're building from relatively few resources, it'll be important to not overwhelm and to make sure that we're kind of working out all the kinks before we offer a full lineup of programs and services. The last objective that we have is to also make sure that we're still making progress on building up our ability to steward the programs and also the facility. And we talked about that last time as well. So we need to make sure that we're reserving enough capacity to continue to build out program development and evaluation tools, take care of the building, do the budget tracking and monitoring that we need to do for this cost recovery framework. And then we need to report out on that achievement and other goals that we may set. So with that in mind, we overlaid it back onto the pyramid and thought about, okay, what does this mean in terms of what programs and services we should offer, and how does that fit in line with how we think we're going to be able to ramp up the resources that are needed to implement all of these successfully. A little note on that. Some programs are easy to get off the ground very, very quickly. Others may require hiring new staff. They may require building out different protocols. They may require significant marketing. If you think about offering the facility for a major corporate special event, for example, those are things that are planned many months in advance by the corporation. But that means that the city would need to market the facility in advance of all that lead up time, and then of course be able to resource it appropriately. So that's just a very extreme example of how, as I've been telling reset staff, this isn't like flipping on the light switch. This is more like turning up the dimmer switch. So I'm going to pivot in a second, and we're going to have Ryan really talk about the phase 1 plan and also speak to the resources that we think might be necessary to implement that. But at a snapshot, phase 1, we're calling the foundation. And what we mean by that is we are building all of the supporting elements to build upon as we go forward. So last time we spoke about the need to make sure that we have the administrative services that are supporting everything, the scholarship program in place in order to attend to our goal of equity, etc. Phase 2, we're calling structural, and you can think of that as we're framing up this reset. We're building the skeleton. And now we're starting to attach some additional programs and services. This is where we start getting into a lot of public opportunities to utilize the community center. And then in phase 3, at that point, we're hoping we are established and that we are then able to start adding in some additional programs and services beyond the foundation and the structural, beyond public good, social good, and those really core business sustainability programs and services. I also wanted to remind the commissioners that this list represents past and potential programs and services. So some of the items on this list, maybe the city didn't offer in the past, and maybe the city won't offer all of these items in the future. But we wanted to have some good clarity as we built this plan about possibilities. We've also spoken with you about the ability to add and subtract from these categories of programs and services as you continue to develop what Parks and Recreation looks like in the city of Mercer Island. So with that, I am going to stop sharing. Or Ryan, did you want me to drive for you?
You're a heck of a driver. I'll have
Okay.
you drive if that works.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. And this is Ryan again, Ryan Daly, Operations Transition Team Leader, Manager. So moving on and just talking about phase one and the foundation element, and I think Emily really summarized this well. When you think about building a house, you're starting with that foundation. And so though our minds are quick to jump to the services and the offerings, there is a very substantial need within the administrative services portion to really focus on building that framework. And that's really what we're looking at as we move forward. And with that follows the facility preparation that we discussed a couple meetings back, that this facility currently, the community center, which I'm sitting in, doesn't look like the community center right now. It is not ready to offer summer camps. We don't have the protocols in place yet for even those summer camp programs or the facility rentals that would be to follow in the future of phase one. Now, just because we're moving into this phase one, to Emily's point on the dimmer switch, doesn't mean we're flipping that thing straight to the top. There will be a process that we work through to slowly bring those items on in a controlled fashion. The marketing strategy, and Emily had just sort of touched on this as well. We pretty much have to recreate all of our materials for the community center, and this is a fairly significant amount of work. One, in specifying what that differential pricing may be, what the rates may be, but also in just creating the actual documents in themselves and distributing them and getting those out. So that's a pretty significant lift that I'm going to talk about here in a second in a timeline snapshot. Field reservations, those are something that are already occurring. Katie Herzog is actually managing those right now. But when we implemented that position, I don't know, 6-8 months ago, it was on a very limited basis. And now we're starting to ask to do a number of other things. And so there's a need that we have to streamline that process. And that'll really be a key factor within phase one. Another item, it's been a while since I've spoke to the commission about this. We do have a number of current community center rentals on our books. Specifically looking at this summer, we do have rentals, weddings, different events and whatnot that we need to start communicating with and giving a really strong idea of what their future may be. I'm not committing to offering anything this summer. I think that would be very difficult at this point, but there's a communication component that needs to occur with those groups. And also subsequently, if we need to reschedule them or we have the opportunity to reschedule them to a future year, that's a retained revenue that we get to hold and we can move that forward. So that's going to be really important for us to retain that clientele that was hoping to host with us. This is all to say that's even before we offer any rentals. So once we get to that implementation point, there is a customer service need. There is a significant training element to the staff that will be working those rentals. But also, it's all of those items we talked about earlier in preparation that actually have to come to fruition to offer them. Then within this foundational piece, we get to start thinking about the future and that being phase two, which really, I'm pretty excited about phase two because that's when you really start to see what this division is going to look like. You start to get an idea of what the full operating budget could be or will be as you move into phase three subsequently. So that's it's a ways off in phase one. It is something, it's not going to be something that comes around right away to setting those protocols and whatnot for phase two, but it'll be something that we're evaluating and we're looking at as we move forward to program offerings. So I mentioned a timeline, and this is just a snapshot that staff put together to give you an idea of what we're anticipating. So the yellow dots, those are what we'll call planning items. So that's the preparatory step that we're going to have in place. As you can see, we're right in the middle of it right now for the immediate action plan. with summer camps, which the implementation for those camps will be across July and August. So you can see that. And then on the backside of summer camps, you see the evaluation component. That's going to be so important for us because, again, this is just this summer. We're really looking for this long-term successful development of programs. So that's going to give us that snapshot as we move into future opportunities in 2022. You can see that we're offering field rentals and boat launch permits and items like that. Those are things we're currently doing through the immediate action plan. The special use approvals, I do want to touch on this just really quick. We get a lot of these. We get a lot of personal phone calls of, hey, can I do this in the park? Can I do that? And that's, unfortunately, right now, we're really not in a position to evaluate those. We don't quite have that staff resource. So what we're going to be doing early in, actually, starting in March, but going through April, is we're going to be talking about what do we have the ability to offer this summer for those special uses of parks. A big portion of that plays into park maintenance and the assistance that we're going to need and the collaboration we're going to have right there. Focusing on phase one and that foundational element, that's when we really start to set the stage for the future. Talking about the maintenance and the custodial, we're actually as a city making a pretty significant shift right now in the way we manage our facilities and the way we maintain them. And that's going to a model of using in-house custodians. That's a change from the past. In the past, we had contracted that work out. So we're going to have to figure out how that matches up with a facility such as the community center that has a very significant custodial need. So we'll be working over that over the next 2 months. Administrative services, again, that's a component we're going to be creating that foundation around, ensuring that it grows as the division grows. Very important to keep that focus and ensure that we're tracking those items, the budget, the policies, the different aspects of our facilities and our programs that need to make sure that they're growing not too fast. And I'll just mention that in the past, we had a habit of trying to do everything and do it right now. This is a component that's going to be really important for us to focus on to ensure the quality and we'll call it right size of the division as we move forward. I do just want to highlight gym rentals and community center rentals. And I talked about this earlier. What you're seeing there is a pretty significant lead time. One, because we can't operate this facility in the current situation with COVID-19 that maybe it was 2 years ago, obviously. So we're anticipating there's a decent amount of lead time there, but it's also on that preparatory work to get ready for how we implement those rentals and utilize the facility as we move forward. The scholarship program and the inclusion services, those kind of go hand in hand for an immediate need that we have right now. The scholarship program, obviously, we're going to be offering summer camps this summer, and we want to coordinate with YFS to make sure that those families that have that need know where to get it and have the ability to access it. And as we've seen with YFS and the food pantry and different services provided there, there's definitely a community need for that. And Parks and Recreation does serve a purpose in providing an opportunity, a recreational opportunity to those families. So quickly on the resource plan, I want to highlight on the left-hand side, that's your current staff resource. You'll notice that there's 2 asterisks next to 2 of the positions. That would be myself and Meryl. We're still serving a EOC function, so we're still providing support to the Emergency Operations Center. And then you have Katie Herzog's position, the Recreation Operations Coordinator, which is an FTE. And that is an ongoing position through future budgets as well. The positions highlighted with the red LTE, those are limited term and they expire on December 31st. So it's something we're going to be thinking about as we move through and into this summer about what our long-term structure is going into phase 2. I think it's important that we wait a little bit to establish what that looks like until we have a fuller picture of what our offerings may be in phase 2 and subsequently into phase 3. The more immediate need would be the staffing resources to implement phase 1. And what you're seeing here really highlights that moving the community center into a more operational function. So implementing those program rentals and preparing to offer in phase 2 usage of the facility for recreation programs. So what you have in front of you is a rough estimate. I'll call it very rough because there are things that we need to hammer out, specifically the custodial and the maintenance aspect, as well as the supplies. The supplies kind of hinge on what we're going to be offering and at what level. So that's something we need to work through. What is going to be fairly consistent would be the scholarship program and supporting those youth participants that would be looking to utilize our summer camp programs, but also the salary and benefits, which that encapsulates the facility coordinator, a 0.75 reservation specialist, and also some casual labor that would be toward the end of the year when we actually start to implement some rental opportunities.
Okay, I'll take back over. But before perhaps I do that, I thought maybe I'd add this comment about phasing and implementation of phase 1. One of the things that maybe wasn't as clear with the timeline that Ryan showed is thinking about your meeting schedule coupled with that timeline. So if we don't go and ask the city council and receive approval for the overall phasing plan for phase 1 in particular, for the resources for phase 1, if we don't get that green light until the end of May, you can start to really feel how long it will take then to hire those new people and have them in place and then be able to feel secure about offering reservations, for example. And so that's the ripple effect. We need approval, we need the budget, we need the people, and then we can start really making the facility available to the public. Okay, so last on our agenda was just to mention to all of you that we have created this list of program development tasks and policies and procedures. There are 2 reasons why we created this list. One is, again, to just check for alignment with the reset plan. And the second is, it's just good practice to take a look at your policies and procedures and make sure that any that haven't had attention for a while get updated or improved. And so we have listed on this slide examples from the phase 1 ambitious work plan of policies and procedures and protocols that we want to spend some time on. In your packet, the attachment that listed all of the phases showed little asterisks next to the items that we believe in part or in full will be coming before this body, seeking input and in some cases seeking approval, and in some cases even being forwarded on to the city council for the city council to adopt a city policy. So they're both a mix of administrative level and then appointed and elected level items on that list. But hopefully it gave you a sense of all of that background work, all of the administrative services workload that we feel is present. And so that is our last slide. I'm going to stop sharing screen. We can go back to it if we need to. And then we're happy to answer any questions that you have about the materials from tonight.
Commissioner Richter. Oh. Commissioner Struck.
Thank you, Peter Struck. So this plan, as it's set out, reminds me a little bit of what the Mariners did a couple years ago when they're, and I'm sorry for non-baseball fans, the analogy, but basically the general manager, Jerry DePoto, said, you know what, we got to strip everything down to the foundation. We're going to, you know, and so forth. And oh, by the way, it's going to take us 2 or 3 years. We're not going to be very good. We're going to have a lot of losses, so forth, so on. And what happened was the consumer basically said, well, you know, we'll come back in 3 or 4 years when you're good again, kind of thing. And I think that what's going to happen here is that we basically have a 3-year phase, 21, 22, 23, to get the reset plan kind of back to where it was back in January 1, 2020, or somewhere along that line. But granted, with a lot more foundational efforts and so forth. But I think what's going to happen between now and then is a lot of, you know, former users of the facility specific and the programs in general, they're going to find other alternatives because they're not going to wait, you know, put everything on hold for 2 or 3 years. For example, you know, I looked at the activities for 2021 here, and there's a lot of rental issues, reservations and so forth. Really, there's only one kind of programming activity, and that's summer camps. So that tells me, well, maybe Rotary will be back at the community center for their luncheons and so forth. Maybe not, depending on COVID precautions and so forth. And I understand, and I'm very supportive of kind of this going back to ground zero and trying to, you know, have more structure, et cetera, et cetera. I think what my suggestion would be, trying to be constructive here, would be to say, taking a chapter from the Biden administration and say, well, we've got this 3-year rollout and so forth, but if we want to do Operation Warp Speed and say we're going to get everything done in a 1.5 years, just to pick a timeline, here's what it's going to take. We're going to have to, you know, obviously hire more staff more quickly. You know, there'll be a bigger investment. Hopefully, you know, we'll bring programs and revenue online quicker too. So I'm not sure net where you end up. But I just think that if you went to the community and said, well, you know, the community centers could basically be closed except for private events between now and until 2022. And oh, by the way, you know, all these other programs will be somewhere out there. I'm not sure you're going to get a lot of sympathy for that. And then I think the other concern I have is, again, thinking out to 2023, you know, there's a parks levy coming up. And if, you know, people have kind of moved on, they're going to say, well, you know, maybe the parks, you know, they don't do much anymore. Maybe we don't need that. They don't need that money. Again, that's way in the future. But so I would encourage you to try to shorten the timeline and you know, get things online quicker than what's envisioned currently. Thank you.
Chair Westberg, if I might.
Go ahead.
Just a couple of comments. Thank you, Commissioner Struck. This team, like you, recognizes that this is a long timetable, and we also believe there will be some pressure to speed up. But I think you put your finger on it. It's about the desire to fund and the ability to fund at that level again more quickly than what we have laid out. That's it in part. I think the other part to keep in mind is, as we talk about phase 1 being the remainder of this year, that, remember, coincided with our inability to be super good at forecasting what's happening with COVID. So our thought process was, we can't make an assumption that we'll be able to open the doors to the facility on July 1, for example, and not have to worry about COVID. So phase 1 is deliberately planned to give us the time to continue to work on development of phase 2, really, and to do so while COVID constraints are still there. Also, we have the timeline of going back to the city council and actually getting funding and hiring the people to do the work. Phase 2, I believe that the service offerings, if you look at them collectively for the immediate action plan, phase 1 and phase 2, encompass quite a bit of the service areas that community members have expressed as high priorities, and begin to meet community need well. I think there are definitely items in phase 3 that the city will hear from residents that they want those programs and services moved up in the timeline. And I think that's a possibility. I think we're going to get some feedback from the city council as well, and we're going to understand if there are specific items that they want to try to pull forward. And like I said, that just will require the resources given in a timely fashion. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner McCarthy, and then Commissioner Cohen.
Hi there. Thank you, Jody McCarthy. I was just wondering, compared to other cities in our area, how are we doing with our Parks and Rec reset? Are we sort of in the middle of the pack? Are we like at the back of the pack? What are other cities doing? I mean, obviously we have the field rental, so that's really huge in terms of keeping all of the, especially the youth sports going on the island. And we are unique in having the community center as well. So where are we basically in the pack of cities right now? Thank you.
Sure. So I would say it runs a gamut. Everybody's doing different things. Everybody's making different plans for the remainder of this year or going into next year. The unique factor isn't so much our community and event center. The unique factor is that we have 2.75 people working in recreation right now and a limited budget, where those other cities may have made some reductions, but I think Mercer Island's reductions were more significant than on average in other cities. So we have to build back, and we have to go and seek the budget necessary to do that. I think it's clear from the research that I've done that many cities are contemplating doing summer programming this year. Summer camp being the most obvious offering. Some are going to be operating their community centers or recreation centers, but in a COVID consistent way. And I think you're seeing community centers that have senior centers as part of their function operating a little bit differently too, going into the remainder of the year. So it's hard to answer your question. I think we're approaching programming in the same way as many cities, with the caveat being we can't yet count on the budget and the staffing level to deliver everything that we delivered in the past. It's been clear to us that there's a desire to not request a budget that is overly burdensome to the entire city, given the reduction in revenues across the board in the city, and to instead be thoughtful about adding back in increments.
Commissioner Cohen.
Thank you, Don Cohen. I think that, I mean, that may be a politically astute way of approaching this, but I'm struck by Peter Strzok's comments that because Peter has been one of the most vocal over the last several years on cost control on all sorts of different issues, yet I think his suggestion to at least think about a shorter timeline, as he admits, means more money, more resources needed. So I wonder whether the reset team thought about having several different potential models. One is a faster one that requires more resources early. One is one where COVID is, however you define, under control because of vaccines by a certain date. And again, I'm not trying to make more work for you, but if Peter is making that comment, somebody else is going to make it on the council or in the community. And we've already, we've already seen the tie-in comments with the park levy issue and stuff like that from some citizens. So maybe that's obvious, but I was taken by Peter's comment. I don't mean that I was surprised necessarily, but if I was surprised, it was sort of interestingly surprised.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Cohen. What I could say is if we get this sort of feedback from a majority of commission members, the reset team is happy to go back and provide a couple alternatives as well, just so that we're ready for that conversation with all of you at the moment in time that you're ready to recommend something to City Council, and also for City Council's benefit as they discuss what they want to approve. As you know, the initial ask is just to get started with phase one. And so there will also be opportunities to come back actually only months later as we're developing phase two and needing the resources to implement that. You can contemplate that we'll be going back to City Council in late summertime this year. So it's only a matter of a few months later, we'd go back and start asking for the resources on phase two. And then at that time, that's when I would expect them to have taken the pulse again, been thinking about the revenues as they're coming in. They'll have a few more months of revenue data, and then they can start to think about how aggressive they might want to be at budgeting for and standing up programs and services for phase two. But we could provide a couple options there. I would think they wouldn't need to consider it necessarily this spring, but could consider it in the fall or late summertime, and that might feel more comfortable too, because they'll have more data at that point.
This is Commissioner Westberg. I just responding in part to Peter's comment and also some of the other comments. I would suggest that a possible alternative scenario, instead of the population losing interest in their parks, will be that they will exert enormous pressure on the council to see programs restored as quickly as possible. You have only to read through the comments to the survey to realize how much people care about the community center, the programs it offers. They have particular loyalty to certain ones. And I would be surprised if people are going to be willing to accept the notion that many of those things will not come online until 2023. But I don't think they'll necessarily look elsewhere. I think they'll say, we want our programs. So council, figure out a way to get them. Any other questions or comments? Lynn, Commissioner Gualtieri.
This is Lynn Gualtieri. Just commenting on that, Rory, you know, I myself started looking at Bellevue Parks and Recreation to see their offerings for my son. So, you know, it's not a big deal to drive a mile off the island in either direction for lots of other opportunities. And there's just other camps that I was thinking of sending my son to this summer, and they're coming back saying, oh, they're going to be all online. And I personally do not, he doesn't want to go to art camp online. So I am seeking out, I'm like, I want in person, you know? So, I mean, it's everyone's personal choice with this, right? But also just back to Emily and Ryan, like, what do you want from us right now? Because it seems like we're constrained by funding, 2.75 people working on this. And we're also constrained by county guidelines. You know, we can't have people in the community center and all this. So what do you want from us? You want us to go through that list? I mean, I could say, why aren't you doing park shelter rentals? That wasn't on the list, whatever. That's a small thing that seems to just involve like a phone call or something. But so do you want us to get into those details now, or what do you want?
Yes. Yes is my simple answer. Tonight, we are looking for as much feedback as you can provide on, if I had to give it to you in priority order, I think I would say, give us as much feedback as you can on what you see listed as phase 1 offerings, knowing where we are in phase 1. So give us the feedback on the bits and pieces of that. And that would then include, if you have any feedback on the resourcing plan. The resourcing plan, of course, runs hand in hand, of course, with what the program offerings are. But if you have comments on that, that would be priority 2. And then priority 3 would be any comments that you have on the overall phasing plan. So all 3 phases, and I've heard some of those comments already. So thank you very much. And then the last priority would be if you have any comments on the list of policies and procedures that we gave you.
Commissioner Birkenwald.
I just want to piggyback off Lynn's comment about how easy it is to go to others. You know, the summer camps are really important. Our families depend on them, and how easy it is to look elsewhere for the opportunities. And I just would say funding limitations, you know, may be a consideration now, but you do need to look forward, because you lose those potential customers and they might not come back. And I think some people, and this has happened during the pandemic with me, with my family as well. Our previous daycare that they were at closed during the pandemic. We left and we're not going to go back. And so I think it is something for us to consider in going forward. If we expect to have a robust camp program, you're potentially losing a lot of those customers and they might not come back.
Sure, and just to speak to camp, the camp announcement will be going out shortly. So we are geared up, getting ready to go to market and implement summer camps for this summer. Just I want to make sure that that was clear, especially to anyone who might be listening. There will be summer camps offered this year in person.
Chair Westberg, if I could chime in also, Ryan Daly, Operations and Transition Team Manager. One of the things the commission had discussed early on is, you know, we're discussing if we're losing clientele, so to speak. That might demonstrate that we don't need to be in a certain business. If there's not a demand for those programs to be offered, if we were to slow roll and people left after 1 year and chose not to return, we may, as a commission and as a staff, think, gosh, maybe that's not where we should be dedicating our resources. I fully believe summer camps is where we belong. I mean, that's our industry, and we offer some very unique options that aren't offered elsewhere. But I think when we're thinking about the larger programmatic element, that's something that we want to think about. So I would hate to jump in very quickly, surpass some of that foundational element that will help us evaluate and implement future programming, because we want to retain certain customers or whatnot. So I just wanted to share that thought of maybe the importance that I see in that foundational element. I do think that when you're looking at phase 1, I think, you know, we're already 3 months into that year phase. Items from phase 3 may move forward into phase 2. I think you're going to see a little bit more fluctuation on the back end of this plan than maybe what you would potentially see on the front end. So I just wanted to chime in. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Commissioner Gualtieri.
This is Lynn Gualtieri. When you say summer camp, are you talking about the, I forget what it's called, the little Mercer thing, or are you talking about, you know, tennis camp, kayaking, all that stuff too?
Yes. Again, Ryan Daly, in about, I don't know, pretty soon, in potentially the next 15 minutes, you're going to see a list of our summer camp offerings that Katie just developed. So when Emily mentioned it's coming soon, you had no idea how soon it's actually coming. But yes, tennis, sports camps, the Mercer programs, kayaking, paddleboarding, those programs, yes.
Awesome. I was just going to say, just offered all outside. You know, I think the latest statistic, and I don't know, other people have kids in the Mercer Island School District, wasn't it 75% of the parents wanted their kids in school? And that's indoors in school. So I'm sure they want them outside at all these camps. I mean, art camps outside, just be creative and offer it all outside.
Commissioner Struck.
Thank you, Peter Struck. Yeah, so one suggestion would be, you know, right now in this foundational work, as I understand it, there's a lot of policies and procedures and so forth like that. From a resource standpoint, I think that would be ideal for a consultant. It's short term, you know, once you set it up, hopefully then, you know, more permanent staff can kind of take over the monitoring and you know, ongoing responsibilities, but to kind of try to divide and conquer, you know, use that strategy as opposed to saying, well, we have to hire all these, you know, FTEs and then get them going and so forth. Maybe this would be a better way. Thank you.
Are there any other questions at this time? So does that conclude, Emily, or do you have more? Do you guys have more to?
I see Commissioner Cohen.
Yeah, I've got one. Sorry.
Commissioner Cohen, go ahead.
Yeah, Don Cohen. You know, even if you decided not to have like an alternative faster model, I assume that whatever a final report and recommendation would be, let's assume it looks pretty much like the reset team has come up with. But I would imagine it would include a discussion of why it's that extended a period of time, including all the things that you said. And I was also impressed by what Ryan said, that you know, one of the fundamental ideas was this is giving the city the opportunity to decide what is or may not be appropriate as the Parks and Rec operation goes forward. So I'm not adamant about having a shorter time period alternative, but I'd like to be able to have the council understand and the citizenry understand why that isn't being the recommended one for now, in addition to all of the you know, tax burden issues and all those kinds of things, that's not our problem, that's the city council's problem, you know.
Very good, understood. And we'll make sure to try to include that rationale for the timeline, both in the report materials and in the presentation to City Council. And we'll give some thought. We will give some thought. I heard enough comments along this line, and we know we need to be ready for criticism that it's too long, and to have a dialogue about what opportunities there might be to speed it up. And so we'll work through some possibilities to discuss with you at the next meeting, and then hopefully with the City Council. I do think we have this built-in opportunity to talk again, regardless of what the City Council may adopt in May. We will have another opportunity late summer, early fall to talk about, are we ready to continue on this same path, or do we want to speed it up, or do we need to slow it down? So there'll be another opportunity shortly.
Don, did you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, I did. I had one follow-up on Don Cohen. Thank you. I emailed Ryan a day or two ago, and he answered me because I needed some context for what the difference was between camps, which are in an earlier phase, and youth beginner programs, beginner/intermediate, which are in a later one. He provided me some information that at least had some logic behind it. But I don't know if that, I mean, what he said is camps, consecutive days or programming, often for a duration of over 3 hours, provides a childcare element. Youth beginner intermediate programs, specialized programming specific to a topic, generally 1 to 2 days a week. Normally class is 30 minutes to an hour. But what I'm hearing is partly because of the differences in resourcing and staffing necessary for those things, but also because of the importance of these summer camps for all the reasons that people have said, hey, we want those in the earliest phase possible. I'm not sure whether I agree or disagree with that, but that's what I'm hearing from people who are closer to that, who've spoken tonight.
Any other comments? Ryan and Emily, would it be useful if people had thoughts after the meeting as they look at the material to send you any of those via email or whatever, give you a call?
Absolutely. Be happy to take any comments that you have. We'll be refining items up until late next week for your next packet.
So comments on phase 1, comments on the policies,
Resourcing plan if
resourcing plan, if you want to dig into that.
I would just add, this last week, I had a number of commissioners reach out to me directly, calls, emails, very, very helpful. It's helpful for me to relay to Emily and our staff team to have the conversations and know a little bit individually where your heads are. So please continue to use me as a resource and reach out whenever you feel the need.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments before we move on to the department report and update? Because we're getting down there time-wise. So Ryan, you want to take that?
I will take it. Thank you. Give me 1 second to share my screen.
Thank you, Emily.
Let's see. All right. Are you all seeing that? All right. We're moving well. Okay, I do have a couple of quick updates. I'll just share briefly on the Mercerdale Park Playground. Staff led by Paul West held a public meeting on February 8th. The designer showed a variety of opportunities that could fit within the existing footprint. As you know, currently, that's actually after the weather yesterday, it dried out a little bit. So it's not as bad as that today. But that playground does have significant drainage issues. Attendees to that meeting did talk about ensuring accessibility and inclusionary play opportunities. So that's something that will be worked up for a future meeting with a design that's being developed to really address those needs that are coming forward. We're anticipating construction. Whoa. We're anticipating construction to occur this summer. That is, unless there's a desire to expand the footprint, which would be there would be quite a bit of work that would go into evaluating and altering any potential expansion.
Brian, can I interrupt you for just a second?
Yes.
Commissioner Birkenwald has a question, and so does Commissioner Richter.
This is Commissioner Birkenwald. I had a community member contact me and just express concern that there was going to be a choo-choo train being put back at the park because everybody calls that the choo-choo train park.
They were concerned that the train may not be there?
Exactly.
Okay. That's really helpful. And I think Paul's on this call as well. So
yeah, they were really concerned. It's like a 30-year resident who was, and she doesn't have kids, but she was really concerned that the choo-choo train would not be put back. So they said it didn't need to be the same choo-choo train, but there needed to be a choo-choo train at the choo-choo train park. Okay.
That is outstanding feedback. The passion around playgrounds, it's Parks and Rec. It's got to be the most outstanding part of the job is seeing people out utilizing them and the passion that goes along with it. So thank you for that, Commissioner. Community art on the
Hang on,
now.
Commissioner Richter.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, Amy Richter. Can you go back to that first slide we were, oh, there you are. So this is a question regarding that last bullet on the request to expand the footprint. And you said something like, unless there is a decision to expand it. So I was wondering what would initiate a decision to expand the footprint?
That would come through those public meetings that they're discussing. You know, if there was overwhelming community support, or if it was something that was being recommended, staff may recommend for us to look at that opportunity.
And has that been surfaced?
Ryan,
from
can
the
I jump
committee?
in?
Absolutely.
So I went to the meeting on February 8th, and there were some people that were expressing interest in doing splash pad there, and that would be something that would require potentially to have the footprint expanded to add the splash pad element to the playground area. So that's probably where that expanded footprint is coming from, is to add certain design elements and also to make it as accessible as possible to as many different people to be able to use it. So it would require, for example, to have ADA ramps going up into the play equipment and stuff like that. So that would make it a larger size equipment that would be required. Thanks.
Ryan, if I may too, just
Yes.
to jump in. So Jason Kittner, your Chief of Operations, Public Works Director. So Jody, Commissioner McCarthy is absolutely correct. There has been some discussions, some intent, some wishes for a splash pad. Our design does include a choo-choo element to it, or a train element. We understand that the thematic program of a playground is important to this community, and this is a beloved playground. Whether or not it stays in the end, that's still TBD because it's still being finalized, but it is something that is being considered. I will just point out too that we, as 100% accessible as possible. As you can see in the picture, there's some concrete retaining walls around that structure, which make it a fairly challenging site because fall zones for playgrounds have gotten larger over the course of years. And so what I mean by that is you can't have as many play elements in a specific area like we used to have 10 or 15 years ago because those fall requirements have gotten stricter to improve safety for the playground. So that said, our designer is working on the playground design now. We have a very engaged group of community members that are participating in this process, and it's going to be a great project as it comes together. And so stay tuned for more information.
Thanks, Jason. And we'll have staff continue to keep you updated. I actually have not been a huge part of this project, so we will have an update to the commission at probably the April meeting to give a status report. On the island lanterns, I'll move through this relatively quickly. I know we're getting late. This was a project completely funded by a Culture grant. Sarah Blubis actually coordinated this with the help of a number of individuals and organizations. So if you have a chance to pop by Mercerdale, it does look pretty cool. Please do check that out. Just keeping the commission up to date on the BMX course and the conversation that's occurring there. On March 1st, this Monday or last Monday, we held a virtual meeting. Kim Frappier, Elaine Summergren, myself, I believe a couple of commissioners were involved as well in that meeting. Staff initially just provided a little bit of a history over the course, the reasoning maybe why it's called the BMX track or BMX course. Talked about the current operational and historical challenges that have been faced, and also that we've been engaging with WCIA, our insurance carrier. Staff does have plans to engage with a consultant to review the current usage. I think it's important that we continue to highlight the current use and maybe the intent of the facility as it was developed previously. We did have a number of community members on the call, which was really just outstanding. We heard concerns around habitat and impacts of the course usage, and specifically the expansion that we've seen in that area, and the impacts it's having on the trees and the vegetation around it. We also heard from some of the users regarding the title of the track being BMX, and that not actually reflecting the actual usage, or maybe what the preferred usage is by that group. But it's important to understand that the rules were developed with the idea of BMX in mind. And so that's what the intent of the original facility was. And there's a little bit of a conflict obviously occurring between the users of that facility and passive park users or other stakeholders within that area. So the way the meeting went, I think extremely well. It was very helpful to receive and hear feedback. Staff provided information on the pros plan. I think that's going to be a critical element for initiating any change to the area should come through the form of the pros plan and be identified as such. But there is also the short-term operational aspects that we're considering, and that's where Kim and Elaine are currently focused right now. So I'll continue to keep the commission up to date on things we're hearing, things we're seeing out there at that facility. The pros plan, I haven't talked about this in a little while, but we do have a meeting, a virtual public meeting scheduled for March 23rd. Staff is working on that. I will later, actually very, very soon, I'm going to show you our planning schedule and what that looks like for the Parks and Rec Commission for all of your meetings, and where the pros plan is going to start fitting back into your process and have a little bit more of a continuous update. We've pushed, I don't want to say push, but we've lengthened out the process a little bit, and rightfully so, to make sure that we were hitting the recreation reset plan as well as the docks, and giving us a little bit of a longer runway on the pros plan as we move forward. We do have a number of boards and commission openings, and I highlighted Parks and Recreation. We have 2 commissioners' terms who are expiring, but they do have the opportunity to reapply and continue forward. So if you are interested, or if any community members are interested in being a part of the Parks and Recreation Commission, the link is on there as well, and the deadline to apply is May 6th. So I just wanted to highlight that for this group. Hey, summer camps, I promised, I told you. Here's sort of our flyer that you'll see. I think we're gonna start posting tomorrow. On the back of this, which I'm not showing because we haven't firmed up all the contracts yet, on the back of this flyer will be the actual offerings and listings for the different programs that are offered, whether it's tennis, golf, kayaking, Lego. We have a biking camp this year, some outdoor programs, soccer and art. So we've really worked, and I have to give Katie Herzog a lot of credit on this. It was a lot of work getting a diverse set of programs, as well as age groups. So look forward to that. I think we're going to really be rolling out the marketing starting next week. And I would appreciate any commissioners who want to forward that information around to the community. It would be extremely helpful and appreciated as we move forward with offering some programming. And then finally, I have to give this commission a congratulations. The Aubrey Davis Park Trail Safety Improvements Project. We went to council on Tuesday. Excellent job, Chair Westberg, in presenting the recommendation. And Councilmember Jacobson made the motion to accept that recommendation. So now staff will be moving forward with revising that scope of work amendment for the Department of Commerce grant. As soon as that's covered and we're approved there, staff will start work on the project design. And then the Parks and Rec Commission will have the responsibility of facilitating the public input process at 30% design. So again, on that aspect, it was about a year-long process for the commission, and thank you for all of your input and pushing it through. Excellent job. So with that, thank you.
This is Ryan. I'm just going to add a comment on that
Yeah.
last one. This is Commissioner Westberg. I will just say that to all of the members of the commission, a huge thank you on my part, but also on the part of the city council. They were almost embarrassing in their praise of the work that the commission has done to date. So thank you all for your degree of engagement on this project and on so many others. And believe me, the council is very aware of what we've been doing and appreciate a great deal. Okay, the next item of business is commissioner reports and work plan updates. So would you please raise your hand, press your raise hand button if you have a report you would like to share with the group or any questions or concerns about work plan items. Okay. Seeing none, then I'll remind everybody that the next special meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission is March 18th at 5:30. And the next regular meeting is April 1st at 5:30. So the time is now 7:37 and this meeting is adjourned. However, I would remind you to stay seated until the city has terminated the Zoom broadcast. Did you have a question, Amy?
I did. When is the deck that you just presented, Ryan, available to us, or will it get posted?
It should be posted.
Monday,
But
maybe?
tomorrow's Friday, so I'd count on Monday.
Yeah.
But if the commission would like, I could send it to you right now.
That would be great. I'm interested in the pros plan side.
Okay. What I will also do, I will send you all the slide deck, and I will send you the work plan schedule so that you can take a peek at that and have an idea of what our lives look like moving forward. And you'll see August is in red. I'm keeping it red. We're vacationing, so let's all commit.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Anybody else? If not, we'll wait for the signal that the broadcast is terminated.
All right, folks.